Hey, what's up guys? Sam here from Sam's Creative Toolbox, and once again, welcome back to another episode here on my channel. And as I said, today I will show you some cool techniques on how to create motion graphics in After Effects. Of course, if you think about motion graphics, the topic itself is actually very huge, and there are a lot of different styles for motion graphics, and there are also no rules. It's all about creativity. So today I will show you how to create some kind of cartoonish stop motion like look. I will show you some of my favorite techniques. I will also show you some tips and tricks. And I think after that you may be able to create some cool looking motion graphics on your own. So like always, let's meet in After Effects and have some fun. Yeah guys, welcome back to After Effects, and as you can see on the left side, I've already imported my footage, so just a huge collection of elements, because as I mentioned in the intro, for most motion graphics animations you will need some different elements. In my case, just a collection of images like this sign right here, or this blackboard texture. And during the process I will also explain to you in full detail the purpose of each of these elements. So for the moment, let's get started. And we start like always by creating a new composition. The name for today is, let's say Motion Graphics 01. Resolution is Full HD, 25 frames a second, and 30 seconds as my duration. Then click OK. Before I usually start my motion graphics animations, I usually think about the direction I want to go. So either I start from the background and then build up from there, or I create the foreground first and add the background later. And that's what we're going to do today. I will first add the background and then I will add numerous foreground elements during the creation process. So first let's go to our toolbar here and select the ellipse tool. Then by holding Shift on the keyboard, just draw a perfectly round circle. And as you can see now, our pivot point here isn't perfectly centered, and for the process it's important that this pivot point here is in the perfect center of this circle. So to fix that, just again go to the toolbar and select the pen behind tool, then select the layer again, and if you now hit Ctrl on the keyboard, After Effects just snaps this pivot point to the center like a magnet. Then after that, just right click and go to Transform and Center in View. Okay, then zoom out a bit, and now you want to add our world. For that I will bring up the ellipse number 1 settings and open up the ellipse path number 1 to change the size. In my case I will increase it to a huge number, because as you can see right now, if I bring down my circle here, now it looks very round, and I want something like, let's say, an X shape, because I want to have more space for my elements. So like I said, just bring up the size even further. So something around, let's say, 4,500 in my case. Then hit Shift and bring down the circle in a perfect straight line. Like I said, the reason why I'm doing that is that my pivot point is always perfectly centered. Okay, then let's zoom in a bit. And after that, it's now time to add our first layer. In my case, it's the background, which is the grass. So just import my grass texture beneath my shape layer. Okay, then after that, let's choose Track Matte and Alpha Matte. Like always guys, if you can't see this Track Matte menu, just hit this toggle switch mode to switch between the 3D menu and this blend mode Track Matte menu. And as you can see, now our grass texture has the perfect shape of our circle. Of course, now this grass texture is way bigger than my comp, so I have a lot of freedom to find the perfect position. I can of course also scale it down. So for example, in my case around, let's say 70%. And like I said, just try and error to find the perfect, the sweet spot of the position. Okay, then zoom in again. Before we now start to add more and more elements, I always recommend to change names immediately, because later on the process, or during the process, we will create a lot of layers, and it's always good to know which layer belongs to which element. So the grass layer, obviously, let's call that just grass. And the shape layer number 1, let's call that matte and grass. Okay. Before we now add more elements, I will just do one more step. And that's about using some of my ruler guides to kind of see where my pivot point for this circle is, because later on in the process, this pivot point right here will play a very, very important role. So just click on this little button right here and enable the rulers, and then just click and drag one of these rulers for horizontal and also one for the vertical. Then zoom in again, and then just try to align your rulers or your lines here with our pivot point. So just something like that maybe. Okay. And yeah, like I said, now it's time to import some more elements. In my case, I will now create the street. For that, I will first select my matte grass layer, hit Ctrl D or go to Edit and Duplicate. Change the name from matte grass to matte street. And then after that, it's now time to import the street texture. In my case, it's a blackboard texture actually, but still it looks kind of like a street. Then as before, select track matte and alpha matte. And of course, now like before, my blackboard texture is way bigger than my comp, so hit S for scale and also bring that all the way down to, in my case, let's say 35%. Then zoom in again. And now as you can see, of course, the blackboard texture has the same size as my grass, so we can't see the grass anymore. To fix that, just select the matte street and again bring up the contents, ellipse 1 and the path, and then just bring down the size until we can now start to see the grass again. Okay, then after that, let's make the fill invisible, open up the stroke. And yeah, then just increase the stroke width to something around, let's say 300. Okay, maybe let's say 250. Okay. Of course, the size of the street depends on your personal taste. You can always make it bigger or smaller. In my case, I think, that really looks great. Let's say I want to decrease the size even more. So maybe something around that. Then hit U to close everything. And if you now take a look at our street, of course, it doesn't look realistic simply because we missed these lines right here. So to create those lines, select the matte street layer again hit Ctrl D. Of course, make it visible. Let's call that, for example, street and lines. Then again, bring up the settings under contents, ellipse 1 and stroke. And first, let's bring down the stroke width to something around, let's say 15. Okay, then click this plus icon here for the dashes to add some of these little lines right here. And then just play around with the dashes to find the perfect size of your lines. In my case, something around 78 looks great. Then close the ellipse number 1, select it, hit Ctrl D. Then open again the settings, the stroke settings, then delete the dashes. Bring down the stroke width to a value of, let's say 5. Because now I want to create the outlines on top and on the bottom of my street. Then again, bring up the ellipse path and bring the size up until your line here starts to line up with the outline of our street texture. So in my case, somewhere around that. Then close ellipse number 2, select it, hit Ctrl D to duplicate it, and do the same thing only for the bottom half of our street. So in my case, just something like that. Okay, if you now zoom out and take a look at our scene, I guess now it looks a lot better than before. So after creating our background, it's now time to add some more details, some more elements. In my case, I have this image of the German parliament called Bundestag. It's just a building where the government makes all the laws and all the decisions. Of course, now it's way too big, so hit S for scale and bring the scale down to, let's say, 40%, or let's say even 30% or 35%. Okay, and then just find the right position. Of course, now it doesn't look great because it's perfectly straight, and I want to imitate that kind of round, eggish shape. So for that, just right-click your image, go to Effect, then go to, where is it? Let's go to Distort, and then choose Warp. Okay, and as you can see now, our image kind of bends over like a circle. And on the warp style, you will find different warp styles like lower, arc, upper. And yeah, depending on what you actually want, and if you want your animation to look, let's say, kind of goofy or like a cartoon, you can choose, for example, wave. In my case, I will just stick to the default setting, which is arc, and then play around with the bend and the horizontal and vertical distortion. So let's bring the bend all the way down to 35 to just kind of match the size right here of my circle. And like I said, if you want to add some of that goofy cartoonish look, just maybe add a little bit of horizontal distortion. So just, for example, 15. Okay. And like I said, then just find the right position, maybe hit R for rotation, and yeah, kind of offset it a bit to, for example, +4 or +5 degrees. Okay, and yeah, I think on this position it looks great. So yeah, after creating that, I think now we should add, let's say, a sky for our background. So just right click, new and solid. Let's call that sky and change the color from this gray color to something in the bluish area. So yeah, maybe something like that. Then click OK. Of course, now click and drag that layer beneath our grass layer so that this sky layer is our background. So yeah, for the moment the sky of course looks way too boring, so I would suggest to maybe create some clouds or add some birds, a moving plane, whatever. To create some clouds there are many different techniques. The fastest one is just go to the toolbar and select the star tool, and yeah, just create a star anywhere in your comp. Then just open up the settings, open up the polystar path, and then just change the number of points, for example, to 10 to create some more details. And yeah, then also play around with the inner roundness. Okay, and also play around with the outer roundness. Then of course hit V to select the selection tool, and then just click and kind of scale this cloud to make it a lot more horizontal. Then hit S for scale and bring the scale down to, let's say, 40%. Okay. And yeah, then maybe hit Ctrl D to duplicate it and duplicate it once more. Okay. Yeah, let's say a fourth time to bring it down here, and again hit S for scale, scale it down to 30%. Okay, and of course select all the cloud layers and bring that beneath our grass layer too. Okay. And yeah, for now, let's take a look at our scene. It looks way more interesting than before. For the next step, I then want to import my car, which is kind of moving across this line right here. So for that, I already prepared a little Photoshop file for you. So just click and drag that PS file into After Effects. Okay, then choose, instead of footage, composition, and click on Merge Layer Styles. If you have layer styles, you can of course choose editable layer styles. Like I said, I don't have any layer styles, so this setup here is a lot faster. Then click OK. And if you now open up that car comp, you can see that I have 3 layers, which are the 3 PS files, or the 3 layers in my PS file. The first layer right here is my car without the wheels, so just change the name to car. Okay, then I have my second layer, which is the left tire. So left tire. Okay, and then of course I have the tire on the right side. Tire right. Sorry, not tight, I mean right. Okay, then just select all 3 layers, hit copy, and then paste them in our main comp. Of course, like always, the car is way too big, so hit S for scale and bring the scale down to, let's say, 40%, for example. Okay, and then find the perfect position for this car. Of course, for Germany, this car is now driving on the wrong side, but hey, it doesn't matter, it's just an animation, and I think it looks better on this side than on the right side. Okay, so like I said, just find the perfect position for your car. Okay, then hit U to close all the settings, and now it's time to kind of start the animation for the wheels. So let's zoom in a bit. Okay, then select, for example, the left tire. And as you can see now, the pivot point is located in the center of my elements. And if I now start the rotation, for example, you can see that the tire here is rotating around the pivot point. Of course, that doesn't look realistic, so again, select your pen behind tool, and then select the pivot point for the tire and bring it to the center of your tire. In my case, that's not perfectly centered, so just somewhere around that. And of course, do the same thing for the right tire. So just click and move that pivot point like before to the center of your tire. Okay, in my case, somewhere around that. Okay, and if you now zoom out again and hit R for rotation, for example, for the right tire, you can see that now the tire is perfectly spinning around its own center point. Let's zoom in again. To start the animation, let's go to the beginning of our timeline, select tire right and tire left. Then let's bring our rotation back to 0 for both layers. Then move forward for around, let's say, 15 frames. And then select just one rotation. Okay, and now as you can see, our wheels, they kind of spin. Just one rotation and then stop. Of course, the rotation isn't perfect. As you can see, I've done a pretty bad job cutting out this tire. Of course, if you're doing it, then do it better than me. So as I said, the tires are animating, but at 15 frames they stop. But now I will show you an expression to kind of repeat this animation over and over again. For that, alt click the rotation stopwatch and type in loop, out, bracket, quotation mark, cycle, quotation mark, and close bracket. Then hit Ctrl A to select everything, Ctrl C to copy. Then also alt click the other tire and then just hit paste. And as you can see now, our tire is spinning and spinning and spinning without stopping anymore. Okay guys, so let's say that we are now ready to animate our car and the street. So for that I have to do a little setup, so just really now pay attention to what I'm doing. The first thing I want to do is select the grass layer here, then select this parent or pick whip tool and parent that layer to the matte grass. If you want, you can then change the name from matte grass to, for example, controller. And then select the blackboard texture and the street lines and also parent them to the matte street. And like before, change the name from matte street to matte street controller. The reason why I'm doing that is simply that if I now move just one layer, in this case the matte street controller, everything else will follow. Okay. Then after that, select the left and the right tire, parent that to our car. Okay. Then after that, it's time to create a controller layer for the car. So for that, I will use null object. So right click, new and null object. Call that one car controller, for example. So after that, bring your null object all the way down to the center point or the pivot point of your circle. In this case, like I said, I use the rulers to kind of help me find the perfect position of this pivot point. So like I said, just select null object and then move it all the way down to kind of align it with these two lines right here. Okay. Then after that, let's select our car and parent that to our car controller. The reason why I only parent the car to the car controller is that the tire right and left already look at the car and the car looks at the car controller. So if I now select the car control layer, hit R for rotation, let's zoom out a bit by the way, and if I now change rotation, you can see that the car is perfectly driving on the road. Okay. So let's zoom in again. And if you now take a look, of course the tires are spinning, but actually it doesn't look realistic because the street isn't moving at all. So let's go to the beginning of our animation, select the street line layer, hit R for rotation, click the stopwatch right here, then like before, move forward for 15 frames. And for example, change the rotation to, let's say -1. Okay, and like before, alt click the stopwatch and paste the expression like before, hit enter. And if you now take a look, the animation looks way better than before. Okay guys, if we now make a short RAM preview, you can see that the street now is moving correctly. Maybe it's a bit too fast, but we can easily fix that by again hit R on the keyboard to bring up the rotation settings. Then select the second keyframe and just stretch it out more in time. So just for example move forward for about 10 frames. And then adjust the length of your animation and again hit 0 on the keyboard. And as you can see right now, it looks a lot better than before. Okay guys, now that the driving looks kind of realistic, it's now time to kind of animate our car in and out. So for that, let's go again to the beginning of our timeline, select the car controller, hit R on the keyboard, click the stopwatch right here, and now just bring the rotation all the way down to the negative side until we can't see our car anymore. In my case, it's around negative 45 degrees. And now it's time to think about how fast you want your car to kind of drive in the scene. In my case, let's say about 2 seconds will look good. And after that, bring the rotation all the way back until your car hits its final position. In my case, around negative 7. Okay. So yeah, for the moment, let's say that I want that car to stay at exactly the same spot. For example, let's say the driver wants to look at the German Bundestag, and then the car starts to accelerate like in the cartoon. So the front gets up, and then it accelerates and moves out the screen. So for the actual acceleration, let's select our car right here. Again, zoom in a bit. And now again, select your pen behind tool, because now you want to move the pivot point from the car from the center to the center of our rear end tire right here. Because now what's happening if we hit R for the car right here and bring rotation all the way up, you can see that now the front gets up and it looks kind of like the car is accelerating. So let's undo that for the moment. Then, like I said, let's say that the car now wants to stay at this spot for around 2 seconds. So move forward for 4 seconds in the timeline. Then click the stopwatch for the car rotation. Move forward for around, let's say, 15 frames. Sorry, 15 frames. And then bring the rotation all the way to, let's say, negative 26. And again, move forward for around, let's say, 10 frames. Bring that all the way down to 0 again. And after that, select the car controller, hit the stopwatch or this keyframe button right here. And after that, let's jump to, for example, 7 or 8 seconds in the timeline. By the way, let's zoom out again to see the whole composition. And then bring the rotation up until the car kind of moves out the screen. So if you now take a look at our animations, the car kind of drives into the scene. The driver looks at this building right here. Then the car kind of accelerates and then moves out the composition. So for the moment, let's hit 0 again to make a short ramp review. Okay guys, so here's our animation. Like I said, the car comes into the scene and then accelerates and moves out. Okay guys, so now after the animation is, let's say, almost perfect, it's now time to add even more details to make your composition look better and better. So at this stage in our process, I think that now it's time to kind of animate that building, because it looks a bit too boring. I want, let's say, kind of rotate it into the scene. So for that, let's click that toggle switch mode and also enable the 3D button here for this layer. Then go to the beginning of our scene, hit R for rotation. And if you now take a look at the building and let's say you want to kind of flip it from back to front, you have to rotate the X-axis. So just click the X rotation stopwatch, bring it all the way to the negative side. Okay, then move forward for around, let's say, 1 second. And then bring it back to 0. But in this case, I want some kind of overshooting to make it look like it's actually flipping from back to front and then going back to the final position. So change the value to, let's say, 20 degrees. Then move forward for around 10 frames and then bring it back to 0. Okay, then move to 0 in the timeline again. Hit T for opacity. Click the opacity stopwatch, bring it all the way back to 0. Then move forward for around, let's say, 10 frames, and then bring it back to 100. Okay guys, so as you can see, our image now kind of whips from back to front and then back to the final position. Of course, there are more ways in how you can actually animate images in or out. So for the moment, let's deselect or delete all our rotation keyframes. Hit T for opacity and also delete our opacity keyframes. Then hit S for scale, go to the beginning of our timeline. Then click the stopwatch, bring the scale all the way down to 0 so that our layer isn't visible at all. Then, like before, move forward for around 1 second. And like before, just enter the value you had in your final position. In my case, it's 35%. Of course, if you want that kind of overshooting effect, just add 10 or 15% more. In my case, let's say I want 45%, or maybe let's say 40, which isn't that big. Okay, and then like before, move forward for 10 more frames and bring that value all the way down to your perfect final value. Okay, and yeah, like before, you now have the image kind of popping up and goes back to the final position. And yeah, guys, after that, it's now time to add even more details. In this case, for example, I want to add that, let's say, that Berlin sign, for example. Okay, of course, it's always too big, so hit S for scale, bring it all the way down to 30%, or let's say even 20%, and kind of find the perfect position for this layer. Of course, if you want, you can then animate that image in or out using the same techniques I just showed you for this building right here. And let's say that I also want to have me driving this car. So just import the SAM PNG file, or of course in your case an image of you or your girlfriend. Bring that on top of our car layer. Like always, hit S for scale. Bring it all the way down to, let's say, 40%. Okay, again, zoom in a bit. Okay, then find the perfect position for me, for Sam. For example, somewhere around that. Maybe rotate it a bit to, for example, 2 degrees. Okay, then select the pen tool here, because now it's time to actually draw a mask around the window, because I want, of course, to sit in the car and not outside. So just do a rough mask around the window shape, close it, then hit M to open up the mask settings and change the mask from add to subtract. Okay, zoom out again, and yeah, as you can see now, Sam is driving the car. Of course, you now have to also parent that layer to our car controller or to our car. And as you can now see, Sam is actually, yeah, like I said, driving this car. Okay guys, now we are at the end of my tutorial. Before we finish though, I want to give you, let's say, a short summary about all the techniques I showed you, because yeah, after watching or editing my video, I thought that maybe it was a bit too fast, a bit too complicated, but in reality it's actually very, very easy. So like I said, pay attention to the pivot point, because that's one of the most important things for animating objects and elements in After Effects. Then of course use the scale, position and rotation to kind of animate your objects in or out, or also find the perfect position somewhere around your composition. Also maybe play around with 3D objects. Of course play around with, let's say, some comic elements and some real life elements. It really depends on what you actually want to achieve. But like I said, the techniques I showed you are just some basics, just one of many, many different techniques, effects, and how you can achieve some great looking motion graphics. Yeah guys, that's it for today. Like I said in the intro, the topic motion graphics is a lot more complex than just this one video right here. But still, I hope that you may learn something, that you now are able to create some of this motion graphic stuff on your own. Of course, if you find the video helpful, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, check out my social media sites, and yeah, like always, stay creative and have fun.